It's the Eagle Forum with your host, Gary Shorman.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Forum on Eagle Television. Great to have you watching as our program is brought to you by Hayes Med. Our guest today is new City Commissioner Michael Berges. And Michael, good to have you here.
Well, thanks for inviting me. Thank you.
You know, one of the things that we were talking about before the show, to me, it's impressive somebody that wants to put their name into the hat to say, hey, I want to run for a public office, whatever that office may be. We'll come back and ask you that question. But before we do, for the viewers out there, where did you grow up? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
My hometown is Onega, Kansas, which is northeast of Manhattan and northwest of Topeka, about 45, kind of triangular, 45 miles from either.
You don't really get there on purpose. I'm from Clay Center, and we talked about that. You have to get off the interstate to get either one of
way off, and there's a Highway 16 that runs by Onega, and if you're not looking to your left when you're driving or right, you wouldn't see it. It's about 800 people. So I grew up on a cattle ranch. Our cattle ranch probably has as many cattle as people in that town. So, but that's where I grew up, and then came out to Fort Hays in '99, basically to wrestle. And I thought at the time that was a long 3 hours away. It was a long ways away from me. That's about as far as I'd ever gone. So I thought I was kind of running away too. So.
How'd you do at wrestling at Fort Hays?
I was practice fodder. I'll admit it. I won't ever say that I was real great at it. I enjoyed it for about 3.5 years, but I was mostly just a practice dummy for the guys that were much better than I were. It's definitely a step up. You think you're pretty good in high school, and then you meet some competition from other states that come in. There's guys on our team from Colorado and Nebraska and Oklahoma, and you start meeting some other people that, and you realize the competition certainly steps up. So.
Well, one thing you probably learned from that, you don't really wrestle physically in the city council. You do get to wrestle with some other items along the line. Yeah. But why did you decide, hey, you woke up one morning and said, I'm going to run for this? What caused that?
Well, it wasn't just one morning. It was over time. I've always had an interest. My degree is in political science, so I've always had an interest in keeping up with local issues that come up, and like to discuss them, with my family and my wife at home. So it was one of those things that over the last couple years, once I kind of figured with in my career, it's kind of in a stable spot. We have our 3 kids. They're kind of in their routine as far as going to school and getting to where they need to be each day. And my wife's career is fairly stable, so I felt from that standpoint, the opportunity, I knew whenever that kind of occurred, then I would look at that opportunity to maybe run for a public office. And in the last year or so, there's been 2 appointments to the city commission as other commissioners have left, and so they needed to appoint some people. So that's when I started really focusing on the city commission, saying, oh, there's some opportunity. The election's coming up in 2019 for that position, and I did kind of want to avoid a massive election, which is 2020, with all that's going on in 2020 with presidential election and those kind of things. So I thought, for my first foray into it, a city commission would be a nice spot to kind of.
What did you find out? Was it what you expected?
Yeah, I think so. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I guess I went out kind of the old school way, as people told me, you just got to go out. And I did recognize early on, and people kind of admitted to me or told me that, if I was going to run, I'm not from Hays, and so I really needed to get my name in front of people. And so they said, best way to do that is just to go out and do the door knocking, go out to the chamber events and Fort Hays events, and just be a little bit more public, and then don't be afraid to kind of put your hand out and shake hands and say, hey, I'm Mike Berges, I'm running for city commission, and then just continuously talk to people. So I really, once I announced the run, I think that was February or March, April and May, that's when I really started putting it on my calendar to make a good effort every day to spend a little bit of time getting to know a few more people all the time.
It's one thing to sit at your table and talk about events. It's another thing to go door to door and start asking people. What did you learn doing that? Did it get some insight into our community?
Yes, and I would say I end up. It's certainly nerve-wracking. I think anybody can picture that in their head. The thought of going down a street and knocking on doors. So it's not something you necessarily look forward to doing at the end of the day. But I almost every time after, I'd spend an hour, knock on say 50 doors. I felt very good afterwards because I really never got turned away. Nobody yelled at me or called me names. Either they didn't answer the door, but the people that did came to the door and they gave me a few minutes, and I enjoyed it actually. It made me kind of afterwards every day, you kind of think, oh, maybe I am doing the right thing by running.
Well, one of the things that you were right near the top, the two new candidates that are going to be seated in January are right there at the top with over 1,800 votes, just a few votes separated you guys. What do you think caused that? Because there's a couple brand new faces, never really been before in politics, that are going to be on the city commission.
I probably was a little surprised. I felt my effort, as I told people in the last few weeks running up to the election, as far as I was concerned, I felt I'd put a good effort forward. I didn't know where I was going to land. I kind of, again, with my effort, I thought I'd be in the top 3 somewhere in there. But if I didn't, I felt good that I, again, had put the effort forward. So why I ended up with me and Mason, the top 2, I just think it was part of that, getting to know people. I've seen Mason around kind of doing the same things as I was out. And ironically, I didn't know, once I started running, getting to know the neighborhood and everybody else, he actually lives across the street from me, and I didn't know that until until I started running. And then,
well, we'll have to watch how that street improvement works right over there.
So I think we're fairly similar. I think I have about 10 years on him as far as age, but we're young families. We live in, older part of town over by Roosevelt, and he's got young children. I do, and I think that was just part of us. I think in the election, people just kind of saw us as somewhat similar, and I got told that a lot, just not door knocking and everything. People were happy. It kind of surprised me. Some of the older generation would say, "I'm glad some younger people are running." And so I think between the two of us, I think that's we kind of bounced off each other as far as getting some of the same votes.
Very good. Well, one of the things I know, when you go and you get to be in public office, all of a sudden you get to make some of those fun decisions. I don't know if you call them wrestling for the decision, but there's some things out there that I know you've been a part of. You ended up on the zoning committee, correct? Did that influence kind of the reason you were looking to run as well?
That's a good point, yes. So going back to when some of those, when they were looking to appoint a couple commissioners while some of them left, that was part of some of the conversation I had with former commissioners and other people in town. They said, well, if you're going to look to run, there are board positions that the city is looking to fill, and so that'd be a great opportunity to kind of just get your feet wet as far as getting a little bit more involved with the city. So that was something that somebody had directed me to say, you should do that before you run. And so that's why I did apply to be on the zoning and was appointed there a little over a year and a half ago or so.
Well, it's good to have you on board. There's some issues we want to talk about. We're going to take a break. We'll come back and talk about those, some of the things that you're looking at, and maybe some of the goals you have once you're city commissioner, once you get seated in January.
Okay.
Our guest is Mike Berges, who's new city commissioner, will be seated in January. Back with more after this.
Be one of our weekly winners through football season with the Wolf Furniture Gallery's Gridiron Glory. Players go to HaysPost.com to pick weekly winners in the NFL. Prizes will vary. The best at season end will claim the grand prize, a complete living room set. Register at HaysPost.com in the contest section. Football season could pay off big with the Wolf Furniture Gallery's Gridiron Glory. Presented by Wolf Furniture Galleries, Eagle Marketing Solutions, HaysPost.com, and Eagle Radio.
Is someone in here with us?
Ghost Hunters is back with a new team, better tech, and more answers.
This is my favorite part of the night.
We had to flee our home.
I've been doing this for 30 years. I've chased the truth. Only with the truth can I truly help someone. Whoa!
Ghost Hunters returns Wednesdays at 9 on A&E.
Have you considered the value that quality video content can bring to your business? Mid-America Productions can provide professional visual media to effectively engage your target audience. We're a full-service video production company serving Salina and surrounding regions for over 35 years. Whether you need videos for promotion, sales, training, fundraising, or other purposes, our experienced team can deliver for you. Find us online at mapvideo.net. That's mapvideo.net.
Welcome back to the second half of the forum. Michael Berges is our guest, and a reminder to you to send me a note at gary.shorman@eaglecom.net. I'd like to hear from you about ideas you have for future programs, people you'd like to see over here on the forum program. Again, the address is gary.shorman@eaglecom.net. Michael Berges is our guest here on the forum today. Michael will be seated as a new city commissioner for the city of Hays coming up in January. Michael, there's some issues out there. Let's talk roundabouts.
Okay.
That's always fun. Did you hear about that when you were out campaigning?
Probably the number one topic, and probably the most contentious between opinions of people that, whether they're for them or against them. So that came up quite often.
We are where we are, but what were your concerns?
My concerns with it, and I'm not an engineer, so just looking at it though, I always kind of told people it looks over-engineered to me. It looks like with 4 different types of roundabouts in a 10-block area. That was my concern, is seeing that much asphalt change and direction change in such a short distance. And so I would like to see if there's an opportunity to maybe have a redesign and see if there's something that maybe we can come with simpler.
I know one of the processes there was an extension off of one of the streets, I think it's 37th Street, that seemed to cause a lot of confusion because of the way the roundabouts roundabouted.
Yes.
I don't know if that's a word or not, but it wasn't just one, they were kind of multi-hooked together. So I assume you heard about that as well.
The 37th Street, that's probably, putting my shoes into their neighborhood and into their homes, I can absolutely see their concern of having a throughway come through there. It's right now they're talking about putting a stop sign so that way people can make a decision going left or right or going straight. If I lived in a neighborhood and that was disconnected from traffic and then all of a sudden they're going to say we're going to connect it, I probably have the same concerns. Looking at how it's designed though, the city's kind of made that decision already, that that's the best opportunity to square off that part of the town and to get extension and growth hopefully through the 41st, and that was the best way to kind of connect over to that area. I would again like to maybe look at that as a redesign and see if there's another way to do it, but I don't know if that opportunity is going to be there as they're kind of already in the negotiations of not annexing.
Getting the properties.
Yeah, buying the properties or taking the properties and getting it kind of squared away before the end of the year. So.
What about the new truck stop, the new travel plaza going on? I think that's finally going to have, that's been talked about for years.
Years, yeah.
Was that something on the talk list when you were out and around?
Not as much. As far as people having much of an opinion, because it mostly came to very positive. I think we've waited. That's kind of the conversation of it. He says we've been kind of looking at it for years, and it seems odd that Hays, where it has been location-wise on I-70, a fairly central regional place for people to stop. There's hotels been here for years and years, and people stop here all the time. It seems like Hays is long overdue for having a truck stop. Because between here and Colby and Salina, typically that's kind of where the other ones are. So it seems like Hays fits real well naturally north, south, east, and west to have a truck stop. So I think people are that's probably the only thought is, what's taking it so long? There's various reasons why it's taking so long, and I think now the people are just looking at it saying this is a good opportunity. Let's get it done, and I'm looking forward to it.
You work in the financial services end of business, and how does that play into your thinking on these projects from a financial standpoint? Because that is something you bring to the commission.
I would hope I bring some of that outlook. In my position, I get emails and analyst opinions daily, and not about the broader economy and what's going on, and trying to do those outlook on where growth is in the economy. And I think Hays we feel like it's isolated in the middle of the country, but it's not. Some of the same large economic trends that we see nationwide will affect Hays, and so I hope I kind of bring that as we look at trying to grow Hays from a business standpoint. What kind of businesses should we be looking at, and the same kind of population trends that we see nationwide as far as baby boomers and millennials, and where people are moving, and I think Hays is going to see the kind of same population trends, and hopefully we can reverse some of that, because we need to have some of that millennials and baby boomers stay in this area. So
you run into people. You're one of those. We live Clay Center off the main interstate, but you move here, you see the interstate, you see the college, you see some of the great opportunities that are here. You end up staying. Like yourself, planning a family and doing that. How can you help on a city commission to help more people see that and be there?
I hope that's what I told people as I ran. I didn't really run because I wanted to make drastic changes. I just wanted to be involved in continuing the positive outlook, because I tell friends back home all the time, my folks, my brothers and everything, I love living in Hays. It has every opportunity that we could want as a family. It's, our careers are here for my wife and I. My kids, with what they enjoy as far as Sternberg and the library. Our youngest has Down syndrome, and I can't imagine being in another community that has all the resources that he needs. And so it just Hays provides so many of those resources for our family. And so it's about just being positive and leaning on the chamber and other opportunities to get that message out across the state that Hays really does have it. And we moved, when we came back, we did leave Fort Hays after we graduated for a few years. But I remember a conversation with my wife. We lived in Manhattan at the time as I ran a hotel. Where do we want to go? We could have pretty much gone anywhere, and we just knew, without really securing jobs at that time, to go back to Hays, and it'll work out, and it has.
Well, it's a great success story for others that may want to do that same thing. What do you have fears? You become a city commissioner, there's an expectation that, well, we got to get something done. We got to do something. Now I'm elected, I've got to get something done. Any concerns about actually making things happen?
Oh, I think there's always, yes, there's going to be concerns. Hays is a conservative. It moves slowly on things, and so there has been, I can't think of the term for it, but there's been strategic plans put forth in the past. In 2016, there'd be strategic plan 2020, and we're here 2020, and we're talking about some of the same things like affordable housing, and so that would be kind of my fears. 2024 from now, 4 years from now, we're still talking about affordable housing or wage increases and water. But it doesn't mean, I guess we'll see in 4 years, if we're still talking about those things, that may just be the way Hays kind of moves. I don't see people in Hays making very drastic jumps to just get things done.
Roundabouts may be one of those things, Once you have one, maybe it's not hard to get to, but the roundabout we have coming is quite a complex one of that matter. So,
and it's going to take a few years for those projects to work their ways as far as once construction starts. So I think it's going to be one of those things. It feels like it's a a quick decision, but it's been in the works for a few years, and it's going to take a few more years to get through the construction.
We all know there's problems over in that whole area. When you look at getting through that, we kind of have our own little roundabout with stoplights at a couple of those places over there, and certainly some issues with traffic. So how do people get a hold of you? Because one of the things in a public, being a public servant, is you're accessible. What do people do to find you? How do they get a hold of you? How do they make suggestions?
I guess I'll give you my information. My name, michael.burgess@outlook.com, is my main email that I use for everything. And my phone number, 785-236-9810. Those are probably the easiest way, and I answer them. My wife thinks I'm crazy. You know, you get calls all the time, and it's an 800 number from nowhere, and I still answer them. I don't let anything. I usually, after I realize it's a telemarketer, I block it, but I answer the phone for every call that comes to me. So.
Well, appreciate that, because I think what you talk about, trying to find ways to move forward, it takes good thinkers to do that. Appreciate you running for office, and look forward over the next few years as you work into that and work your ideas through. And congratulations. Your kids, what do you say, how old are they?
I have a 8-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old.
And you're certainly doing your part to help build the future for our community. For those,
I'm looking forward to that.
So, all right, Michael, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Gary.
Mike Berges has been our guest here on the Forum program. He'll be a new city commissioner come January. Hope you look him up. Hope you give him your suggestions and make Hayes a better community. Thanks for watching the Forum. It's brought to you by Hayes Med and by Eagle Communications, our community connected.